we all want our kids to feel like they're part of a family and all those kinds of things. But if they are more, if you look at your kids now as a purpose, there's a purpose for that kid to be on my team. So therefore, I have a purpose in affecting that kid's life.
Welcome to the Jamodi Podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is Jamodi, just a matter of doing it.
Today we are joined by legendary high school coach, Randy Feemster. Coach Feemster is currently in his 41st season of coaching. He's been a head coach for 24 years and has won 422 games. In 2003, he was named the TABC Assistant Coach of the Year at Trinity Christian Academy. As the head coach of TCA, Coach Feemster led the Trojans to 5 Final Four appearances, 3 finals appearances, and a state championship in 2009. He was named District Coach of the Year in 2008, 2014, and 2016, and TABC Coach of the Year in 2009 and 2017. Before we hear from Coach, take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on social media at Jamodi Podcast.
First, thank you so much for agreeing to do this and giving up your time. You're one of those guys that I feel like so many coaches have looked up to over the years. I'm one of them, and you're definitely one of those guys that I think we want to be coaches like you. By the time we're done. So just thank you so much.
Well, I appreciate that, and let me say this: it's an honor for me to be here too. I tell you what, you're just blowing and going for basketball in the state of Texas, Matt. And you're doing such a great job, and you're doing a great job of promoting it. And this is just another venue that you're using to do that in. And so, we've known each other for a long time. So, and with your coaching of my son and then coaching buddies here, and so I'm just let you know I'm extremely proud of you and what you've been able to accomplish and what you've been able to do because it's no small task, buddy. I guarantee you that you put a lot of work into this, and it's appreciated by a lot of people. I know that. So
thanks, Coach. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Standards and pillars or culture are words that a lot of people use. What were some of those standards that you held in your programs for so long?
Well, when I think about culture, you think that to me personally, now to other people it may be a lot different, but that's a word that's kind of come up just in the last few years. You really didn't hear about it much, 5 and 6 and 7 years ago. I didn't anyway. Now maybe others did, but it's kind of, but the bottom line was, I think we all had culture. We all had a certain, because we all, when I would talk about my program, I'd say, this is the way we do it. This is TCA basketball. This is how we do it, And if in order to be a part of our program, these are the things that you need to do. But we never would really call it culture. But I really love listening to Chris Beard. I love listening to Buzz Williams, to Grant McCaslin. Those guys who are huge culture guys. We have a guy here on campus named Marshall Edwards, who is our golf coach, and I'll tell you a little bit more about him a little bit later. But he's a huge culture guy, and he's like won about 12 state championships. He's got 2 or 3 guys on the tour, and so, but he's a huge culture guy. And so, when I started understanding that, okay, there's actually a name for this, then I started thinking, well, you know what, maybe I need to be more intentional towards explaining what our culture is. And so in the last few years, we've kind of done that, I think culture is something that basically would describe who you are, what your beliefs are, what your values are, those types of things. And again, I think we've always done those, but I think culture creates behavior, and then behavior will create results. I think if you have a good culture going, you don't have to have a whole lot of rules. Kids understand what's expected of them within a program, how they're expected to act within a program, then those behaviors will come out as a result of that culture, and then your results will become as a result of the behavior.
Yeah.
If your kids like at TCA, our pillars are trust, respect, and hard work. And I think if I had to, and we have spirit too, which is a little bit different, but those three are kind of the main ones: trust, respect, and hard work. And I think I would come back, and I might even add humility to that a little bit later on. But that being said, if our kids will follow the habits of those pillars, then we don't have to come up with a whole bunch of rules. Hard work, it explains itself. Trust explains itself. And if we'll do those things, we don't have to have a whole lot of rules. And so, like saying, those are basically our pillars. And then we have what we call, and I got a lot of this from Chris Beard. Here the great thing about Chris and I actually had an opportunity to coach him back in he was on my JV team.
Oh, wow.
At Irving, yeah, and also Grant McCaslin at North Texas. I had an opportunity to coach him, and I've known Buzz for years, and he and I used to work camps together with Mike Kunstad, and there's a huge name right there as far as basketball is concerned. But I started listening to those guys a little bit, and Chris has talks about different habits that each one of those pillars have, and for us, our habits are we got to be when you're talking about trust, you're talking about telling the truth. You're talking about being honest. Always tell the truth. Don't make things up. Tell the truth, and then we'll handle, if it's something that's a negative, we'll handle it at the end. But always be a truth teller, and trust your teammates, trust your coaches, do the right thing all the time. You do the right thing all the time. You don't have to, like I said earlier, there's not a whole lot of rules that you need to put with that. If you're doing what the right thing is all the time, and then I think one thing, a couple other things, just be trustworthy, do what you say you're going to do. But I think all of these are great things in the sense of being a young man too, and growing into being a citizen of the country, and a citizen of, and being a good family man, being a good, a good friend, and so forth. And then finally, as far as trust is concerned, we talk about disciplining yourself, and that's a statement, a lot of this stuff, and how this is Matt, we get a lot of our stuff from other people, and so then we kind of parse through things, and what we feel like is good for us or good for our program or things that we do, we put it in. Discipline yourself, so nobody else has to discipline you. So those are kind of our habits of trust. And then respect, it should buy into the system, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. But if you buy into what the coaches are really wanting you to do, that obviously is a huge respect level. Okay, whether you agree or don't agree, whether you like the style or don't like the style, if you buy into the system, I'm just going to tell you what, you're gonna have a lot of success. I mean, I don't even care what your talent level is. If you have 15 guys on your team and you have 15 role players, if they all buy into the system, you're going to have a lot of success.
Yeah.
Okay. And, sometimes that success turns into winning games. Sometimes it doesn't, but you'll have a lot of success. And, communicate with your coaches is huge as far as respect. If you're not going to be somewhere, don't just, oh, by the way, coach, I forgot to tell you, communicate with your coaches and then also, follow their instructions, promote your coaches, promote your team, to other people. Don't let anybody in the hallways talk bad about your coaches or your teammates. Show respect in that way. And then just be positive. No sarcasm with your teammates. Just know, and same with the opponents. One of the things I have really had a hard time with is the idea of the trash talking stuff. And with against. I get it. I get it. There's basketball's an emotional game, and you can get caught up a lot of times like that. But if you practice, self-control, and you practice having respect, then the stepping over the opponent, when he takes a charge on you, that's not there. The helping him up is, those types of things. And I think that to me, that tells more about your character than anything else. And that's what these pillars do basically, is they tell what type of a character you are, who you are as a person, what kind of integrity that you would have. And so, never criticize a teammate. We don't want to do that. We don't use sarcasm against teammates, and we want our players to defend our teammates. On the court, in the classroom, in the hallway, whatever. Whether somebody says something disparaging about one of our teammates, we want people to stand up for them. Whether you agree or don't agree, that's not the issue. The issue is this is your teammate, and there's not a whole lot of people that are willing to go through what your teammates are with you. Your team. There's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that go on
Right.
the basketball court or the football field, or whatever that happens to be. And so there's not a whole lot of people that share that. If it's easy, then everybody would do it. Not everybody does it, and so you got to have a lot of respect for those who do.
Yeah.
And I think that's real key. And then the hard work part. Buzz Williams, I talked about him earlier. He said something about true confidence can only come through hard work. And then he said something that I love. The statement that is you can be anything you want to be. That's a positive, motivating statement. However, it's not necessarily true.
It's not
the
true.
Statement, no, it's not. The true statement is you can be anything that you earn the right to be. And I tell you what, when he said that, I thought, man, that's good stuff.
That's good.
Because that's true. That's the truth.
Yeah.
If I wanted to be a doctor, I'm going to have to go to medical school for 8 years or whatever it is, and put in the time and the work and do that.
Mm-hmm.
You don't just magically become a doctor, but there's work that's involved with that, and so hard work is huge.
Yeah.
And then if you have teammates that are working hard, for them to have the trust and respect in you, those other two, you need to be working hard too. You need to be a part of that, and so that is, to me, is the hard work part of it is the part that kind of also fits into the rules. If people out there working hard and doing what they're supposed to do on the floor, then you don't have to come up with a whole lot of hey, if you're not on time. One part of the deal is, if you're there 5 minutes early, you're late, but basically, if you're not on time and you're consistently not on time, well, your teammates, they see those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And just having respect for them and so forth. We don't like a lot of whining, and complaining on the floor or in the locker room, those kind of things, that once again speaks to your character, who you are as a person. We don't like, excuses. You don't offer an excuse for everything. And we've all, as coaches, we've all had those players who they're always going to have an excuse for something. And sometimes that's your better player. And that's not good. But those are all things. The things that we kind of, and there's some other habits that we look at as far as, and we go over this with our players. And then we try to cultivate that, on a daily basis. At Trinity, we have an opportunity to, in a couple of ways, we do what are called character lessons, and I'm sure a lot of coaches will do those type of things. And whether it's a actual sitting down and go through a lesson or whatever, or if it's just talking at the end of practice, relating something that's going on with your team to life, and those type of things. We have that opportunity to that, and also being faith based. We have great opportunities to bring in the Bible, biblical stories, and things that people went through, and where we can relate those type of things too. And so those are just like what I would say would be just key things for us in our program. And again, we probably did all those things all those years, but we just didn't name them.
Right.
Now,
right.
The last few, now we're naming them. Now we're bringing them up.
Yeah, I think you're right on the money. I mean, a lot to unpack there, but the way you started with that culture is something, that word being used is relatively new. And Coach Fitch at Birdville said the same thing. He said, 5, 10, 20 years ago, nobody asked us what our culture was.
Right.
But it's more of culture is the way we show up every day, how we live, how we do things. And successful coaches like you that have been at the same place for a long time, they've always had that. Let me ask you about buy-in, because I think that is, I'm coming right off of second period athletics right now, where, Moser or Moser or Mauser
Hauser.
at Oklahoma. Porter
Yeah.
Moser.
I don't know.
Moser.
Yeah.
Oh, the Oklahoma coach, Porter Moser, I think is his name.
Yes.
Golly, he like I literally just watched a video where he said culture is every day. And so we have to be talking about it, doing it. And we had a lack of buy-in a second ago on the floor. So how would you, over the years, when you have some players that maybe are resisting, how do you bring them on board with the culture you're trying to create?
Well, that's a great question, because I don't know that there's a patented answer to that.
Right.
Obviously you're dealing with individuals. If the buy-in is not coming from your role players, I think you handle that a lot differently if the buy-in is not coming from your best player. And I think consistency is key, and I get that part of it. But I think if you're not getting buy-in from your top, your top tier players, whatever, it's tough, because everybody looks up to those guys, whether they like, whether they're good characters or not.
Yeah,
they're going to lead. Your better players sometimes, a lot of times, are your leaders, and if they lead the wrong direction, then it's tough. So, for us, I'll just tell you, and this may have been a little bit later on, talking about style of play or whatever, but it speaks to the buy-in part. I've always been a man-to-man, fast break, press type guy. And then there was one year we were struggling beating teams within our district. Our talent level we had a good talent, but it just wasn't to the level that we needed it to be. So we made a decision in the middle of district to change our style. Okay. And we pulled the seniors in, and we said, guys, this is what we have to do. And I'll speak to that a little bit later too, but this is what we have to do to win. And every single one of those kids bought into it. They said, Coach, I don't know if I like that or not, but if you think that's the best thing to do, then we'll do it. And I think a lot of, and that was key for us, because those guys, when they bought in, everybody bought in.
Yeah.
And then again, I'll talk a little later about what the results of that was. But the question that you ask about what happens if you don't get that buy-in, if you don't get that buy-in, I don't know that there's a whole lot you can do sometimes, honestly.
And that's
I really
I love that answer, because I feel like that's real and that's true.
Yeah.
You never quit. You always continue to try.
Right.
But
exactly.
You and I know that the success of each season, because most likely as coaches, we can learn a few things, tweak a few things. We're always trying to get 1% better. But our senior class is what's really different every year. And it's the strength of the leadership, the buy-in from them, and how we can enable them to be great leaders that really does dictate how successful of a year that you have.
Well, absolutely. And here's the thing. The thing that I was lucky in the sense that the first year that I was at Irving High School for several years, and it was tough. It was struggle. We had some good years, but we also had some pretty tough years. When I came to TCA, I was an assistant for a couple of years, and then I took over as the head coach. The first year out, we had a very talent-wise across the board, I would consider, very mediocre team. When we make it to the Final Four, okay, how we made it to the Final Four, I cannot tell you. I mean, we beat people that we had no business beating. Okay, well, the next year there's already credibility built in, and so now it's not that everything as a coach you say is, oh well, yeah, we're right 100% behind you, but at least you have some credibility, and there you've got some built-in buy-in, I guess is a way of putting it. Okay, well, if he took a team like that and was able, and you and I know, you've been to the Final Four with your guys, and so much of that is, I hate to say it, is luck. I mean, there's some things there that have to happen, and if they don't happen, if that call wasn't made, if that if that unbelievable shot from that kid who hasn't made that shot all year, we go to the Final Four on a shot made by a 3-point shot made by our point guard who had made 3 3-pointers all year long. And he ends up making it at the end with no time left on the clock. And so you have those types of things, that will happen. And if you think it's hard to get there the first time, try getting there the next year.
Yeah.
I mean, even though you may have the same personnel, it's just hard, and things got to happen, and they got to go your way. But what happens is, if when you get that success, then the buy-in becomes a little bit easier, even with teams who don't have the talent level. We were lucky. We for a stretch there, we had some pretty good talent, and we were able to go pretty far and had a lot of success. But then because of that, even with some teams that you would say, what in the world? How in the world? We're playing in a game against a team in the regional finals that we have no business winning. And we have a guy hit a shot at the buzzer that throws it into overtime. We're 1 point away, of one free throw away at some point of going to the Final Four with the team that, once again, we're playing superior talent, but these kids, they have bought into what we're doing, and whatever it is, they do it to the very best of their ability. We talk about look, do what you do and do it to the best of your ability, whatever that happens to be. And when our kids start realizing that I'm a practice player, but I'm just as important as that guy who starts.
Yeah.
Because if I don't do my very best on the court to get that guy ready, then in the game, he's not going to be ready to go. And so we emphasize to all our kids, look, even if you're the manager, you're just as important as the starting 5 guys.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you start getting that success, it's easier. But like to your point earlier, we've also had some years where we've had some pretty good talent, and the guys just didn't buy in. They just didn't. And you know what? We struggled.
Yeah. And I think that's you and I, we look at the game in a similar way. We like to, and we'll get to style of play here in a little bit, but like to play fast, like to shoot it.
Yeah.
But there is this idea of, I've had coaches ask me, well, what if you're playing against a team like this, and what if they do these things? Well, the true answer is we can try to adjust and do everything we can to manipulate and get our guys over that hump. But the truth is, we might just lose. We might just lose that game. Most teams are going to run into at least one team throughout the year that's just better, deeper, more athletic, can do what you're trying to do, but a little bit better. And there is a part of that with culture, and it is a part of that with buy-in, where we can have retreats, we can have the right questions, we can have small meetings, we can have player-led meetings, but there is a part of their responsibility and their level or ability to do that does play a big role in it. And I think it's really freeing for coaches to hear that from someone like you that has had so much success, but is just honest about the fact that some years it just wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's exactly right. And in those years, it always comes back on you. What did I not do? Or I should have done this, or I couldn't get him to do this. But to your point, exactly. Sometimes it just not anything that you can do. I mean, it's really not. I mean, if kids are going to be kids, and that's and a lot of that's in how they were brought up, and we're lucky here at Trinity that we have most of our kids are, they're great young men, and women, and they come from great families, and it's a very high academic school, so the expectation for them is to succeed. And so we're at a school where peer pressure is in the classroom versus on the court a lot.
Yeah.
And so which is really, it's great. But so you have that kind of a mentality in a lot of these kids anyway, that they're going to work hard to get that A. A B is not sufficient for a lot of these kids. They're going to do, if they have to spend an extra hour of homework time, they're going to do it. Well, that carries over a lot of times, and that's just the character,
Right.
of the individual. But if you have some kids that are sliding by that, what do I have to make in order to get a C in this class? Do I have to even work hard, study hard to get that on the final to get a C? Then if you got a team of those, that you're gonna have one of those years. And it's just it's just what it is.
Coaches, the Jamodi podcast is powered by Ballology. What's your BSA score? The Ballology Skills Assessment is the only verified skills metric endorsed by the NAIA, NJCAA, and a growing number of NCAA coaches to discover and develop the best talent for your team. This 4-minute, 40-shot test can be taken free today on the Ballology mobile app. Elevate your game. I mean, how many years total have you been coaching now?
I just finished my 40th year. Yeah,
40 years. You probably had to adjust your style of play from time to time. You just alluded to being a man-to-man guy and then going to the zone. But your perfect scenario, what's your favorite style or way of play to teach?
I love that question because for me it's the style of play that I love to do the most is to get the other team to play the way I want them to play. I saw years ago, I went to the Whataburger tournament, and there was a team out of Baltimore Dunbar. And I believe in the semifinal game, they were playing South Oak Cliff. I think that's who they were playing. It was either that or Lincoln, but it was a team that was up and down the floor, that kind of thing. And Dunbar would get the ball, they would walk it up the floor. They would run 3-set play. I mean, literally 3 sets without an intention of scoring at all. Then on the 4th set, they would try to go to score. And they ended up beating them by 10 or 12 points or whatever. The next night, they play Highland Park in the finals. And they literally ran them out of the gym.
Wow.
They were up and down the floor. And I'm thinking to myself, how great is that? Now, obviously, you got to have the athletes to do that. And then you have to have the mentality, obviously. But that to me, some type of style like that, if you want to run, okay, then we're going to do everything we can to not let you run. You're going to play at our pace, basically. And we want to teach our kids that style. If you want to pull it out and not, then we want to be able to press you guys and to get up and down the floor and make you speed it up a little bit. Okay. Mm-hmm. That's my preference. Now, I love to press. I love man-to-man. I love matchup type, man-to-man matchup type things, and blitzing and run and jump and all of that kind of thing. But, to a question that I think that you might be getting to a little bit later is what style can you play with the kids?
Yeah. Do you we'll just go right into it. Do you, I think a debate out there is, I have a system of play.
Yeah.
I can fit any player into that system and make it work. Or I'm going to take the players that I have and create or find the system that works best for them. Yeah.
No, in that the second one is what we've done through the years. Because, at Trinity, we're a K through 12. And I said earlier, we're a high academic school. We don't get move-ins. Very few move-ins. So the population within the school is pretty well set. We have anywhere between 450 and 500 kids in the high school. Half of those are boys. X number of those are going to play basketball. Okay. So it's not like we can't determine that when they're in middle school or elementary school or what we call lower school here. We can't be Hobbs, New Mexico, with Tasker, and they're going to press. Every one of their leagues, their little leagues, their little dribble leagues, whatever, they're going to press. That's what they're going to do. So the whole time, that's all they've done is press. Okay. Well, I don't feel like we can do that here in our situation because we may not have those kids that can press. Okay. So we're not really able to set a particular system in that, well, again, this is my opinion, set a particular system in and expect our kids to be able to do that. Now in middle school, I don't really like to zone quite that much. We like to do man-to-man, and we like to press if we can. We like to kind of to see if we can do that, and see if we're going to have the talent, the kids that can do that. But quite frankly, we've not had that luxury over the last few years. My philosophy is, and again, everybody has their own way of doing things, and I get that. We set our style of play to beat the best team in our district. If we have, we played against Julius Randle for 4 years. We're not going to man-to-man those guys.
Yeah.
We're gonna. Well, we did the freshman year. We did they ended up beating us in the state finals. We led the whole game except for the last 20 seconds, and they ended up beating us. But that was a group of guys that we could man with. On a year in, year out basis, we're not going to have that talent of guys that are going to be able to do that.
Yeah.
In the last few years, we've just not. And so if we're going to beat those teams, we're going to play the style that's going to be that we feel like we have the best chance of beating those teams. And if we can beat the best team in our district, then we're probably going to win a few other games too, playing that style. And so that's kind of the way we've looked at it. Now, sometimes it's not been the funnest. It's not the funnest to watch. And you've gone up against us before, and exactly what that means.
It's difficult to play against, though, because you're right. You said something interesting. You said, I want to play a style, or I want to have the other team have to play the way I want them to play. Right. And I just think that's a big shift, because how many coaches go into the game? I'm probably one of those that, hey, we're going to do what we're going to do. Yeah. And it really doesn't matter what they do. And I think there's an area of growth for me in that, is maybe think more about what tweaks and adjustments can we make to take what they're doing, but make them come over to our side.
No, absolutely. I think, there's different formulas that people use, that, okay, if you pick your starting five, and if you're three out of your five are more talented than their 3 out of 5, then man them,
Right.
Well, we don't we don't do that, or I don't do that. What we're going to run this defense, and we're going to run it to the very best of our ability. And we're going to teach our guys that running this particular defense, you're going to be successful at. And and I think, Matt, we've run it against you guys a few times. And what it does is there's nothing magic to it. What it is it's a defense that it's a Syracuse zone. We ran the 3-2 for several years. And that was, that's hard to figure out, because not a whole lot of people do that. Yeah. But then when people started figuring that out, we went to the Syracuse zone, and it's not. I mean, you can figure that out. So the bottom line is, you get back to the buy-in. The buy-in is you got to fly around.
Yeah. Yeah. When I've watched you guys play your zone, the idea that zone is either lazy or you don't have to work hard in it. All people have to do is watch you guys play it, and you'll see how much effort your guys are giving within that thing. It's incredible.
Yeah. If you don't do that, it's a normal 2-3 zone. Yeah. It's just a normal, but so you got to fly around, and you've got to cover for each other. And there are some basic, no open threes. We're going to contest every 3, and then we're going to not give up the paint. That's kind of what we want to try to do. With the dribble drive offense, you're looking at 3-pointers and you're looking at layups, right? So we're going to play a zone where we're going to try to make you take the mid-range shots.
Yeah.
We're not going to let you. We're going to contest all 3s. And here's the thing, Matt, and to the style itself, and that's what I was mentioning earlier. We switched halfway through the season. We went from that point there. We went 7-2. We won. We only lost one more game in district, and then we got beat in the regional finals. And the only reason we got beat in the regional finals was we ended up missing some free throws down the stretch. Had we had made those free throws down the stretch, we'd win that. But the idea was this, and this is the philosophy that we adopted. If we take less than 50 shots, we win. If we take less than 50 shots, we win. Because that means the other team is probably in that same boat, you know,
and your shooting percentage and shot selection is so good.
Absolutely.
That odds are that you're going to be making more or scoring more points than them out of their 50 shots. That makes sense. Absolutely.
Because here's the thing, you know, Matt, just if defensively, we're going to run that zone. Offensively, we're going to come down, and what you just said is exactly what we're doing. We're going to run that thing until we get a good shot. And you know, we would have set play. We had 13 or 14 set plays, but just like everybody else, our set plays are geared towards getting the shot from 2 or 3 particular guys, you know, which ones we want to shoot the ball. And then we'd go into a continuity type, whether it would be just a regular motion. We did a blocker mover some, you know, and where we just, you know, we were playing against a team, and the official came over and we're running. We actually had a 2-minute and 45-second possession. And he was standing there and he said, I would hate to play against you guys. Because, well, actually, we shot with about a minute and a half and then got the rebound and went, and then we ended up scoring. So, but you know what they did? They get the ball in, they get it down. They played defense for 2.5 minutes. They're ready to get down the offensive end, and guess what they do? They shoot a shot.
Yeah, it feeds right into. They were so anxious and frustrated with the time they spent that they forced one on the other end, and it just feeds into what you're wanting to have happen on the floor.
And then if our guys do what they're supposed to do and they fly around defensively, we're not giving up easy shots. So therefore now, if they've passed the ball, you know, 20 and they've not gotten what they want to get, and you know they go 20 or 30 seconds down, then what do they end up doing? Firing a 3.
Yeah.
You know, now, you know, obviously they're gonna make some of those, but for, I guess, for 3 or 4 years, we were either number 1 or 2 in the Metroplex on defense. One year we averaged 39 a game.
Wow.
Of course, offensively we only averaged probably.
Coach, we've never been near that at Faith, so that's just.
I know, well, and that's okay. That's okay, because that's you know. But that's the whole thing, man. And here's the thing: when we go play you, we know that we're going to have to do. We're going to have to guard the 3. You know, and we're going to have to do a great job on cutting down the drives, and we're going to have to, and not only the 3 out of the half court, we're going to have to guard the 3 on the break.
Yeah,
because you know you guys are going to come down, but here's the whole thing about that. That's your style. That's what you're used to doing. You know, our practices. Some people they might think, well, that's because we did the same thing every day, not exact same drill every day. But we did pretty much the same types of things every day, because those were the things that we were going to get in the game. And defensively, we didn't have to spend a lot of time on defense, quite frankly. We didn't have to spend because you think about it, especially early in the season. You come play us. If you have no clue what we're doing, you don't have any zone plays, and we're zoning you. How many man-to-man plays do you have?
Yeah.
You know,
I'll tell you.
Defensively, you know what? You know how we coached ball screens? Get over the screen.
Oh, get over it. Okay.
Either way.
Yeah.
I mean, get to the other side of the screen. Don't get screened. That's it. Because if you're going to down us, you know, or we're not going to blitz you. We're not. So you know what we're not doing? We're not practicing how to get over screens.
I'll tell you, Coach. You know? It's just what you're saying makes so much sense. It was 3 seasons ago now, Tyler Lumblade's junior year. I've been a stubborn man-to-man coach the entire time at Faith, because my high school coach was man-to-man, and in college we were man-to-man, and I thought zone was for sissies. And so we're halfway through the season trying to play a solid half-court man-to-man and just getting beat, straight line drives. Lack of help side. just frustration across the board. And I just saw this 3-2 zone that a couple guys around DFW were running. Asked some questions about it, and it took one practice. We put it in, and the next game we saw the team get frustrated about it. And that was the last time we've played Man at Faith. And and what it's done for me is free us up in practice to, one, shoot more, to work on our man-to-man offense more, and to really work on defense less, because we have to be great at just one thing, maybe a couple of alignments that people could go into, but we don't have to guard what other teams are spending 95% of our time on. And with the way we play it, we can pressure, we can keep the pace the way that we want. So it's for coaches out there that are thinking mid-season, you can't change to something, especially on the defensive side. I think you can. And what really it is you can be a hardcore man-to-man guy, but you got to make sure that really fits with your personnel, because maybe a pressure zone and giving guys only one or two things they have to really focus on will allow them to be the most athletic they can possibly be.
Yeah, it's really it's kind of funny in the sense that when what you said about, people think, well, you're being a sissy or whatever when you go to that defense, but I think I wrote down here. I wrote down when we went to that in back several years ago, and since we went to the zone and playing the style that we're playing, we have almost a 70% win rate.
Yeah.
160 to 78. So, it's, but here's the thing. We have, and this too, because you've seen our league. Your league is a pretty good league too. We've got pretty tough leagues, and we've, like I said, we played against, when we stepped on the floor one year against Prestonwood, they had 6 D1 guys. Their guy coming off the bench was a D1 guy. So that's who we play against. JP2 over the last couple of years have been extremely talented. Bishop Lynch is extremely talented. And the bottom line, Matt, is this, and this too. You're not out coaching anybody anymore. I mean, there's some really, really good coaches that we have to go up against but I think you have to do what you can to give your guys the best chance to win. One of the funniest stories, however, that and this shows you kind of what the thought process is. My wife was in the stands. Now, she usually sits up at the top of the stands, so she only hears a little bit, But
that's wise.
But she was actually my stepmom was there at the game, and so they were sitting down at the bottom, and there was 2 of our dads were talking, and we were playing, and we were scoring. We were getting up there, and scoring a lot higher than what we usually score. And one dad says to the other, "Hey, we're scoring. We're really scoring today." He said, and the other dad says, literally, "Oh yeah. Feemster, he doesn't let his team score more than 60 points." I thought, ooh,
yeah.
My wife wanted to turn around and say that's kind of most idiotic
that's the
thing I've heard. Yeah,
I've never heard a coach
you're going to hear all those kind, and you've probably you've been able to kind of keep your offensive style.
Yeah.
So
we hear it on the other side. We hear it on the other side. Oh, we're going to hold them to 60 points, man. We never hold people. I've had parents ask me over the years, like, "Do you guys work on defense at all?" Yes, we do. But the zone really has made us look. I like the idea of being different. Because what do 90% of teams do? And that's just my own statistic. But 90% of the teams play a version of man-to-man. And they have a bunch of plays against man-to-man. That's what they work on in practice. That's what they hang their hat on. So let's come on and be a little bit different, where not only are we a zone team, we're a weird zone team. And not only do we, we shoot the three, but man, we'll shoot the three really fast. So like those two things right there make us different to where, all right, not only do they have to, the 3 days before playing us, have to really just worry about us, which we're not worried about what they're doing at all. We're not practicing what they do at all. We're focusing on us too.
Sure.
Is the other 20 games that they've played have most likely not prepared them for this one. I just like that idea.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And here's the thing: when you talk about plays, man-to-man plays, or whatever, they're going to be doing things that you're going to have to work on. Okay, you're going to have to think: how are we going to play a ball screen? Okay, if they are we going to down it? Are we going to blitz it? Or all those kind of you don't. Because they're going to run plays that are going to cause you to have to do that. Okay, balls, if they're screening on the backside, are we going to switch that? Are we going to stay? Are we going to let a guy go through? Or all the things you do with man, which there's nothing wrong with that. Especially if you have the talent to do those kinds of things. Do we switch? But here's the deal: the point you just made was this: everybody has man-to-man plays. How many zone plays do you have?
I have none. I have one.
I have a few, but the only reason why I have a few is because we do it. We run it. Okay, so I know kind of what works against it. Now here's the other thing: if you have 5 zone plays, Matt, I've seen 3 of them. Okay, so we name the plays. Okay, if you're gonna run a play that we've seen before, because everybody runs the same zone plays.
Yeah.
It's just that's kind of the way it is.
Yeah.
So if we go scout and somebody happens to run a zone and we can see what you're going to, then what? Okay, well they're going to run thunder. If they're going to this set here, it's done. Now I don't care what they call it. They're going to call it something different. But in our minds, that's thunder, which is they're going to screen the low guy. He's going to slip on from the backside, come up the lane, and he's going to make the pass there to him. Guy. Those are, and so our kids know exactly. So they get in that set. We yell thunder. They know exactly what the play is.
But the odds of them really running thunder over and over and over and over again and succeeding every time, those are small. So at some point, it's not even. I'm not so worried about the 3 or 4 plays they may run and score on. I'm more worried about the continuity that they're trying to run. Is it a 1-3-1? Is it a 2-guard front? Are they running a guy along the baseline? Because those are the things that they're going to have to do really well over the course of a 32-minute game to actually beat us. So even more freedom to, they just did something and it worked. Well, okay, don't worry. Don't freak out, fellas. Can they do that 30 more times without you getting comfortable with it? Probably not. And so there is just this freedom that has come for it. And I feel like it's made me a better defensive coach. And then, it's kind of funny too. I ask players all the time, like, what would you like, or not all the time, but our seniors after they're just graduating, what's something we didn't do that you wish we would have done? And, one guy said, not shoot 3 so fast, which it kind of like, I chuckled because I'm like, well, you're the one doing that. But then also, you had tons of success doing it. So, okay, let that one go. Another one was, play man to man. And I thought, well, okay, what's the why behind that? Most of the time, because we're dealing with young people, they want to do the things that they're not allowed to do, not necessarily because it would be better for them to do that. So it's just interesting when you kind of get their perspective. In the moment, the zone is good because less foul trouble. Another thing, less foul trouble. Less isolated players, more backside help, the ability to move on the flight of the ball because they're not having to worry about how to guard the ball screen 18 different ways. Right. It's just freedom across the board.
Well, and Matt, and not to belabor this, but the point that we really found out was if you run like you said, a different kind of a zone, and the zone that, if we ran a regular 2-3, then people can probably figure out, okay, this works. But if you don't run your 3-2 can be a 2-1-2 sometimes.
Yeah, it can morph.
You can do a lot of different things out of it, which to me, when they come down the floor, and they've seen 3-2, 3-2, 3-2, and all of a sudden you go 2-1-2. Okay, now you're running the same zone essentially. You're just kind of making it look a little different, but they're trying to figure it out.
Yeah,
and they can't figure it out.
When they continue to move from offense to offense, or even sometimes think we're in man, then I know that we're on the right track.
Oh, absolutely. No, absolutely.
Because sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say to that point, the way we ran that defense, we would, like, for example, if you got beat on the wing and the guy's driving the middle, we let him go. We just let him go. And then we cover out the threes with the guards, and then our post steps up. Yep. We had one kid one year. I always remember him because as he was coming up through our system, I'm thinking, this guy, because he could actually hide behind a pole. I mean, he was about 6'5", but he literally, his senior year, he had 72 charges.
That's incredible.
He had 6 charges in two games. It's unbelievable.
I'm impressed that the referee called that many. Yeah, I'm convinced that referees don't like to call multiple charges in a row.
No, and that's exactly right. Here's the thing: it actually hurt us in the state final game because we were playing against, a team that it was the state finals or semifinals. It was the semifinals. I'm sorry, state semifinals game. We're playing against a team. He's already drawn 2 charges. Kid goes, I mean, and it is a classic charge. I mean, you look at him, and I'm only saying that because the video proved it out. I mean, in the fish.
Don't just take your word for it.
No, that's right. The official called the block, and he fouled out as a result of that. But they ended up getting the free throws, and they ended up beating us by 2 or 3. But anyway, that being said, because we let him go. Well, the guy's going. He thinks he got him beat.
Yep.
Right. Well, and then all of a sudden he steps up and
control is really hard. And I think you allow players to really test their limits of control. Coach, you and I have broken a record already on the Jamodi podcast of this is the most defense that has ever been talked about on this thing. And it happens to be about zone. And it's just that's perfect.
Well, and here's the other thing real quick is about that is you just said it. We spent the least amount of time in practice on the defense too, don't we?
Coaches, the Jamodi podcast is powered by Shoot 360. The future of basketball has arrived in Dallas-Fort Worth. Shoot 360 combines the latest sports technology with the fundamentals of basketball skill development. The result is a one-of-a-kind video game-like basketball program designed to improve your shooting, dribbling, and passing. Visit shoot360dfw.com to learn more and register for your free 1-hour workout evaluation. Shoot 360, the future of basketball is here. Hey, you've been able to be around so many great coaches. You've rattled off a few names already, but who are some of those guys that, you would encourage other coaches to follow and learn from?
Well, those that I talked about, because, they're young guys, they're culture guys. And I'm convinced that culture is the most important part of any team setting.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm just so those culture guys are like that. There's a guy that most people don't really know very well, but he'll come out and I follow him, and you get some text or tweets from him every now and then he's on a couple other platforms. A guy named Jody Bailey. I don't know if you know Jody or not. Jody he was at Jacksonville College when they just pressed the dog out of people, but then he's now the assistant at New Orleans. I went and saw him speak one day. He's a culture guy too, and I went and saw him speak one day, and he literally changed my attitude about basketball. I mean, he was talking about. We wanted to kind of press, and so I went to see. He was at a clinic and see what they were doing, and he said, guys, listen, I'm fixing to show you this, but you have to understand, I recruit my guys. I get my guys, okay, and how well I do as far as recruiting goes a long way in determining our success on the floor. Because if I can recruit the guys that I want and to play this style or whatever, then we're going to have success with it because the system works. You guys don't. You have to go with who you have. He said, but I am thoroughly convinced that the team you have is the team the Lord wants you to have. Changed my whole outlook on teams at that from that.
That's a good reminder, man.
Yeah, absolutely, it is, because here's the thing: we're not going to be. I know you're a competitor. I know we all want to win. We all want to win, and I think we all say, winning is not everything, but it's some of the thing, right? I mean,
it better be one of the goals.
Well, it is one. The bottom line is, Matt, when you retire,
yeah,
they're gonna say Matt Saman, Grapevine, wherever you retire from, and then the next thing is going to be your record. Mm-hmm. So winning and losing is a thing. But you know what? It is, because we don't get to choose that.
Yeah.
And as believers, we have to look at, Lord's in control of everything. He's causing that to happen, or he's allowing it to happen. Either way,
yeah,
that's the team he wants you to have.
Man,
just do the very best you can with it.
Thank you for that.
So yeah, and so anyway, yeah, Jody, I really like some of this. Now, he's not a guy that you're going to see a whole lot of stuff on, but I really like him. My other favorite for our guys that you probably don't follow very much anymore, like Mike Kuhnstall. I mean, how great of a guy here. Nobody has done more for Texas basketball than Mike Kuhnstall.
Yep.
And I was fortunate. I played for him in high school. He hired me at my first.
How's he doing now?
Huh?
How's he doing? Is he good?
He's doing okay, Matt. He's moved down to Austin. Mm-hmm. That's where his daughters are and grandkids are. There for a while he'd spend half the time up here in the Metroplex area. Then he'd go down to that kind of. And I think it got to a point where he was just. So I think he's full time down there now, and so. And he's doing okay. He and his wife Jerry I think are enjoying being the grandparents and so forth. And then your coach, Tommy Thomas was, how great was he? I mean, he was a character. And I don't know, he doesn't ever put out anything either. But as far as coaches that I think you can't go wrong with Jay Wright. I mean, goodness gracious, how great is he? I've looked at some ladies coaches and got a lot of really neighbors. Mike Neighbors he was at Arkansas. I think he's still at Arkansas.
Yeah, I think he is. Yeah,
he's huge. I mean, look at his stuff.
Yeah,
he's got some great. And for you and your program, I don't know if you checked him out or not before, but he's got some great drills, and that would be really good for your
playing fast.
Play. Yeah, it's a very fast style, and I think you'd really like him. A guy from Yukon area. I never can't say his name right, but
Gino. I just always go Gino.
Gino. I love him, and he's got some really good stuff, and so those are all a really, really good guy. And those are the I kind of look at guys that you don't really hear a whole lot of from or about or whatever, because there's some good stuff out there.
Yeah,
and they've got some really, really good stuff. And then again, it's a lot on what style of play are you going to play? What are you going to do? Are you for you in the three? I think, like I said, Neighbors would be great because he's going to be so similar. But
that's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point, because there are so many great coaches and there's so many great styles.
Yes,
and you'll kill yourself.
Yep,
trying to learn all of it.
Yep.
So you do at some point. I kind of use this quote a lot from Rick Torbett when I had him on. He said it takes about 10 years for you to figure out what your style is and really how you want to coach and play. And I could see that being true, to where you kind of settle in, and then you really start to find your lane and find your guys that you want to spend the most time learning from.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the point is what style you want to run. Just Google that, put it in there, and you're going to find 10 coaches who run that style, and 2 of them you're going to know who they are. And just like when Memphis first came out, everybody's running Memphis. They're looking at Calipari. And even though
have you ever met Vance Wahlberg?
I've not met him, but I've seen a lot of his stuff. He teaches a little bit differently. Obviously. But I think that's that. that talent deal,
Mhm.
Calipari, when Calipari or Best or those guys
When
show
he's
up
got
and,
Derrick Rose
yeah,
running dribble
absolutely,
drive,
yeah.
it's gonna work.
You look at we ran a style called Euro, an offense we called it Euro, but it was a Kansas, stuff that Kansas run. And so, you're listening, I'm sitting there listening to him had a clinic one time, and then it hit me. And that would be the one thing I would tell young coaches. I mean, when you first go to a clinic, you are writing everything down. I mean, you have that clinic, the notebook that is not big enough, because you're writing everything down. And then when you get back, you start to realize after about the third or fourth year, I don't have a 6'8", 250-pound guy who runs like a gazelle. I just don't have him.
Yeah.
And so you take in, you learn, like you said. I think that was really good stuff. But it may take you a little while, 10 years or so, to figure out. But at some point, you're going to start figuring out your style, your clientele, the kids that you're going to have or whatever, and then you're going to go and you're going to see self, and listen to him, and you're going to pick this out.
That's right.
And you're going to write that down. And you're going to pick that out, and you're going to write that down. Because my notebooks have become a lot. Not as much. I don't fill in quite as much.
That's
But
a good point,
man. I have found, and this is not a chauvinistic statement at all. I have found that the lady coaches have got some really good stuff. I mean, they really, and they do a lot of culture type stuff too, and so. I really, really like listening to them, because there's a different perspective, and I've actually coached girls, and which is a strange thing, but they've got a different perspective on that you can use with the guys too, I mean, and so my advice to anybody that's, especially that looking for somebody. Find somebody that you're comfortable with. Hey, I really like that stuff, and then just stick with them. Because they're always changing.
That's good.
They're always changing. Especially the good ones. They don't stay the same all the time.
The Jamodi podcast is powered by Sideline Interactive. Sideline Interactive is the leading manufacturer for high-quality, innovative scoring tables and LED video display boards that help coaches and schools bring more excitement to fans, create huge fundraising opportunities, and make their jobs easier. Visit sidelineinteractive.com to check out their amazing products.
When you said 40 years of experience, to me, the answer to this question from you is going to be fascinating. Okay. If you could start over today, what are some things that you would do differently?
I think we've already talked about those things, but more intentional towards culture. I mean, more intentional for that, where not only I have it in my mind, but I am, getting that out to the kids. But I'll be honest with you, the quote that I gave you from Jody Bailey, I think would be the number one thing, because I think when you look at it in that manner, you look at your kids differently. I mean, we all want our kids to feel like they're part of a family and all those kinds of things. But if they are more, if you look at your kids now as a purpose, there's a purpose for that kid to be on my team. So therefore, I have a purpose in affecting that kid's life, whether it's, and whether they take it or they don't. Because you're to our point earlier about sometimes the culture just doesn't fit, for some of those kids. It's the same thing. Some of those kids, it doesn't really matter, what you do. They're on a path that's not necessarily a positive one, Mm-hmm. But all you can do is what you can do, which is understand that you're going to have an effect on that kid's life. And you need to make your effect as positive as it can be. And if he takes it, great. If he doesn't take it, then that's not on you. That's on him. And I know you, Matt, and I know you're that. We hear all this transformational coaching or whatever. I know you're the type of guy that you see a kid that doesn't, walks out there and it's not being just himself or whatever, you don't really care about the basketball end of it. You're wanting to know what's going on. Hey, what's going on? And that to me, earlier on in my career, I wasn't that guy. I was cared about the kids, yes, but okay, it's practice time. Let's get to practice or whatever, and I may not get that touch after practice that I should have gotten. Chris Beard talks a lot about touches, which I think are huge. You got to get touches every single day with those kids.
Yeah.
And that's what I would change. I would do that.
I really appreciate that reminder. I think I needed to hear that. You start to hear maybe about some kids not coming back, or I'll tell you this, over the years, we've lost some kids at Faith and some that don't come. And I just take it so personally.
Sure. Absolutely.
To the point where it's not healthy.
Yeah.
And Jana, my wife, tries to remind me that she told me I'd come home just fretting about a kid. She's like, it's not your job to save them. I was like, wow, like that's a great reminder that only Christ saves.
Absolutely.
I can't do that. But to your point, I can do my very, very best to just be positive but then give up control of the fact that if they make a decision not to come back to Faith, that's not a reflection on me, not a reflection on our school. You never know everything that's going on with somebody.
Right.
But man, Coach, I'll tell you, I've really struggled with that over the years, to the point where even like right now, while we're talking, I'm those faces of guys that for whatever reason have left.
Yeah.
And that question of why, like, what can I be doing better or differently? And then here comes somebody like you with 40 years saying, hey, you just, that's not up to you, and you've got to let that go. So thank you for that.
Well, and I know that, and you're probably a lot like, just by what you've just described, you're a lot like I was, which is the reason the kid is leaving is because of me. He doesn't like my coaching. He doesn't like and you know what? If that's the reason, if he's leaving a great school like Grapevine Faith because of basketball, there are a lot more things that are there that you could never have changed. The bottom line is you could never have done anything to change that at all. And so it's very easy for me to say, hey, I've been there, don't take it personal, because you're invested. It's your program. You're invested in it. So everything that happens, positive or negatively to it, you've got a stake in, and so to see that, your wife is right. We need to listen to our wives a lot more. But she's right. There's not anything, it's not your job. Your job is to do the very best that you possibly can, whether it be your job of basketball, whether it be your job of trying to, help a kid get through life, whether it be leading the Lord, a young man to the Lord. You put it out there, and then how they take it is that's on them. That's on them.
Well, Coach, so many guys have been able to talk with you over the years, watch you coach, compete against you, and they feel like they know you. But after the speed round, they're really going to know who you are.
All right.
Okay,
I'm not sure about this now. Okay, let's
first question.
Go.
First question.
All right.
Favorite ice cream flavor?
It's got to be chocolate. Just straight
chocolate.
Especially Andy's.
Oh, good call.
Oh,
good
yeah,
call.
Andy's
Coach, unfortunately, there's one right by our house in Hearst.
Oh, God.
So Jan and I will be sitting on the couch, and it's almost as if we're in tune. We look at each other,
yeah,
and it's
there it is.
We're going. And so
there you go. That's it.
Okay, this one I'm interested to hear because of some of the things you said with holding teams, to longer possessions. This may, for high school, shot clock or no shot clock?
No shot clock. And you want me to know the reason why, or you want to just
no? Keep going. Okay.
I'm not in favor of a rule that favors one team over, just favors a team over another. And the classic example of that is here at TCA. We some years, most years, we don't have the athletes. We've got basketball players, we got kids that compete. We got, and we've done well. I mean, I don't mean to, we've done well with the kids that we've had. But if you put a rule in that favors a talented team, a more athletic team over a team that it doesn't, can't compete at that. I can't get up and down. We can't get up and down with you guys. I mean, we can't do that because I mean, that's not how we're now. You say, well, coach, you have to coach that. Well, no, I don't really want to coach because that's not my kids.
Yeah.
So I just don't think it's, to me, the argument for it is the one I hear a lot of is, well, that's what they'll get in college. You hear that a lot. Well, 1.4% of the whole population of basketball players are going to play D1.
Not a good argument.
1.5 is going to play D2, and 1.3 or 4 is going to play D3. Yeah. So you get that 3 or maybe 4% of all kids are playing. So what we're doing is we're putting a rule in for 4% of the population of the kids, or it's more entertaining.
Yeah.
More entertaining is a lot more fun to win than it is to lose. And so you want your kids to have the best opportunity to win the game.
Yep.
And if that means, having to slow the ball down and take time off the clock and give yourself a chance to get the best shot possible, or running that 2 minute and 30 second or 45 second possession or whatever, then you know what?
Yeah.
That's what I'm for.
I mean, it'll be definitely the more more superior teams will win.
Yeah.
And the less superior teams will have a harder time
sure
doing that. It'll have to be more of the superior team just really needs to have a bad night.
Yeah.
And then also, I mean, even though most of our offensive possessions, we try to be 12 seconds or less. And I love it when it's less. Coach, near the end of games, I found myself, because this last year's team, we had such a unique group of ball handlers and they could all shoot free throws.
Right.
If it was 8 points or less with about 3 minutes left, we came out and held that thing, and we could go a minute and a half, and then the team would have to start fouling. Yep. We're winning near the end of games. You're going to see a lot more, like in the NBA, an 8-point lead with 2 minutes left. The teams don't have to be doing anything besides just trying to get a stop. Right. Because that possession, they know is going to end. You really can manipulate the end of games because of a lack of shot clock. So I get that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Matter of fact, that's that year that we, when we changed to I was talking about. That's what we actually played. Prestonwood beat us by 18 or so, and so that's when we decided to change our style. The next time we play Prestonwood, they're fouling us in the fourth quarter with 4.5 minutes to go in the game, because we're up by 14, and there is no way on earth that we're taking that thing in the shoot.
Love that. All right. Texting or talking?
Oh gosh. Yeah. I really like talking, but I've fallen into the texting.
Yeah.
To be honest with
you get your point across real quick, and you keep moving on.
Yeah.
Favorite holiday?
Oh, Thanksgiving. I love Thanksgiving. Oh, I love Thanksgiving. The year of COVID, I actually got COVID the day of Thanksgiving.
That's awful.
Yeah, that was brutal. Anyway, that being said, I just, we're big. Come over and spend some time. And I think with Christmas, there's so much other stuff going. When you get so many different families involved. You have Christmas with this family, and all that.
Yeah.
There's just so much of that. But Thanksgiving, you're going to have maybe Thursday with your family and Friday with the other family, and that's it. And I'm all about those leftovers. I'll tell you
Love that.
All about them.
Invisibility or super strength?
Let's go with invisibility.
Okay. If you could travel back in time, what period would you go to?
Whew. That's really good. That's a good question. I've always thought about the Wild West type, that period of time. Yeah. I think that would be it. But I just, man, the luxuries of life that you have now, didn't have then.
let me clarify, because Coach Drew had a great point. I asked him this question. He said, "Well, I really like battles and wars and World War II. I'm a history guy. I love all that. So I'd go back there." And then he paused, and he goes, "But I don't want to be in it. I just want to.
Yeah.
So if you could kind
Wanna
of just,
see it.
if you could be in a bubble and just
Yeah.
kind of see, that's
Yeah. Yeah, that I think that would be it. The 1800s, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Two more. How many cups
Okay.
of coffee do you drink per day?
Oh, I drink a lot. I drink probably three or four.
How do you drink it?
Huh?
How do you
Just,
drink it?
Just black. I'm on this fasting, intermittent fasting.
Yeah,
So I drink a lot of coffee, and
it does help in the morning. Yep.
Absolutely,
Yep.
it does. And I usually drink one around 1 o'clock or so, somewhere in that area, a little bit before then.
Nice.
Three in the morning, then one. So probably
There it is.
closer to 4. Yeah.
You and I are about the same right there.
Yeah.
Last one, probably the most important.
All right.
Godfather or Star Wars, but it could also be neither.
Gotta go Star Wars. Gotta go with Star Wars. I mean, I kind of like the historical deal of Godfather,
Uh-huh.
that kind of stuff, because that happened, that kind of stuff happened,
Right. Right.
That's whether that exact story was true, but I mean,
Definitely elements of it.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So,
But there's something about the dark and the light, though, Coach.
yeah,
That just-
that's right. No, that's exactly right. I go with Star Wars.
Oh, well, this has just been such a treat for me because I feel like, you're one of those. Sometimes I talk to coaches that I don't know very well on here, but I feel like I do know you. And I've been such a fan, and you were so kind to me back when, I was 24, 25, coaching Caleb for IAD Force when he was in 8th
I remember
grade.
that. Yes.
You're just so kind, though. But then just to get to learn more about how you coach, how you think, it's just been such a pleasure for me.
Well, man, let's tell you, it was then that I realized that you were going to be a great coach, and I tell you the reason why, because you held those kids accountable. I mean, to me, the one thing that I really appreciated when you were talking with them, you had those guys look you in the eye, and we're talking about what, 7th and 8th grade. I don't know how young they were.
8th grade,
I'm talking. There's no doubt in my mind that you had the basketball knowledge. That was huge. But you connected with those kids at that level, that at that time, and I knew there was not a doubt in my mind that at some point, somewhere, somehow, that you were going to be successful. And again, a lot of times people make it wins and losses, but that's not what you've done for, as I said at the onset, what you've done for basketball here in Texas is huge. It really is. And I appreciate it. I love looking at your stuff. I tell you what, what it does to me is that takes time. That takes time for you to do that. And that's for you to do that for your kids, for your program. Your kids got to appreciate that. It's just tremendous. It's a talent that I don't think that I would ever be able to master. That's for sure. So this has been a pleasure for me. It really has.
Thanks, Coach.
You bet.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the Jamodi Podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.